Here.
Here.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. We have minutes from August 14th.
Move.
Second.
Motion second. Any additions or corrections? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Solar farm presentation, Sam?
Thanks.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. What you all have in front of you today, County Board members, is a working draft. It is not complete of the Will County Solar Farm Guide, and this really is an opportunity for us to discuss the direction that it's going in to make sure we're headed on the track that you all want to have this as a toolkit in making these decisions and to share with residents and our businesses in Will County. So it starts off, I'm just going to briefly go over it, and then I'm happy to answer any questions or take any feedback. It just serves as an introduction. This is targeted at solar farms, so there's a lot of information about solar, but this is really targeted to our Will County solar farm situation. So it starts with an introduction to what solar farms are, a little bit about solar technology, why they're called solar farms, why they're here, why all of this is happening. So just a couple pages of context, and it moves on to talk more specifically about the technology itself and how it works in a very simplified format, just what's necessary to understand for this context. Then we break down into the different categories of solar, and this will explain when someone says, if you have a developer in front of you that says, this is a DG project. Well, what is a DG project? What does that mean? This is a community solar project. What does that really mean? Why are we calling it community solar? What incentives are associated? Why is this such a popular category of solar? And then we go on to utility scale solar, which I don't believe we'll see any of here in Will County, but just for context, it does define what that is. So you can differentiate between the three major types of solar that are being discussed because of our state legislation. Then I dive into the incentives. I talk about the state incentives, and I also talk about the federal investment tax credit and how that decreases over time and what impact this all plays on the solar development in Will County. And really, essentially, what we're getting at here is solar farms have desirable incentives, which is why that is the type of solar you're seeing in front of you the most. Because I know we've had some discussion about rooftop, brownfield, the different categories of incentives. But again, this is targeted to the solar farm discussion, so it does cater more to what incentives are going to be applicable to that. It then goes on to discuss what a developer needs to apply for incentives. We have a lottery system in the state for the block program. Block program just means there's three different balls of money that will be distributed for solar, specifically this type of solar, the solar farm developments that you all have been seeing. And it describes what's needed and that the application pool will open on November 1, 2018. And then it'll all just be a lottery system. So simple probability, you can see that my odd is as good as George's odd in getting selected for our project to be incentivized. And so it explains a little bit about the block program itself and some of the specifics that really play into the timing, some of the decisions you've been asked to make based on, for example, several developers coming in a specific area, several of the same developers, and it explains the desire for developers to acquire as much land control. That's really what it's about, land control as possible, because the more opportunities I have, more tickets in the lottery I have, better odds I have that one of those projects is going to be accepted, and I can offset all of the costs of doing business that I spent on the other projects that weren't selected. We're also going to be adding a map that shows all the solar farms that were approved thus far, so you can have geographical representation of where the developments that have been approved are located, and then also which ones are pending. That will be a moving map, so it'll probably be an attachment so that as that changes, we can provide an updated version to you all for consideration. The other items that are going to be addressed that are not yet in here is site selection and also density. And we're going to compare it to some other states that have had this sort of legislation in place for a while and have seen the development come to fruition already, so that we all can understand what's to be expected, so we can have some sort of projection to work with. I'm also going to include a vegetative guide that was provided by the Forest Preserve that recommends exactly what type of vegetation these folks should really be looking towards as we look at the big picture and see when this solar farm is no longer there, if it's there for a very long period of time, what type of vegetation is going to be best for the environment. And, you know, aesthetics also play into that, so it really layers those two so they can offer a good landscape plan to you all that will be well accepted by the community as well. Other things that will be added to this are attachments that show the rec values so you can understand and compare from program to program what incentives are available and what little nuances can bump up those incentives, such as if a solar farm has folks buying power who are large corporations and there's only a few of them, the incentive value is less than if it's 50 residential customers buying that power from the developer. So all those little nuances that might explain some of the material that's been presented to you thus far. So that's our starting point. It's really focused on solar farms. If you wish me to expand beyond that point, we can do that. Janine has written the entire zoning section which will be added to this that walks through the process of I'm going to get my special use permit, this is what happens during review, so you can understand the back end of what she is doing, and then we can also add Rhonda's great tax packet that she made to this, so it's in one document that you can keep with you, we can share with the resident, and if they have several questions, we're not sending them to 5 different sources and asking them to dig through material that can be very discouraging and lead to misunderstanding or misinformation.
Thank you. Sounds like a great presentation and program. Any comments? Mark?
I'd just like to say that makes it a really easy to read for us people with glasses, you know. And if you could continue to work in that font, it's a good idea, I think.
County Board Member Ferry, I would be happy to do that.
Good job so far.
Thank you.
Susan?
Lori?
Someone.
We're changing names around here anyway. I went to the Planning and Zoning Commission and Jean had brought up, I saw the map, the one that we were put into place showing where they're at. It was awesome. That was really nice to see. We put it all into perspective, so.
Yeah, that's all credit due to your building and zoning staff to my left.
There you go.
So I'm glad we have something. I know we've been talking about doing this for a long time because I think it's very important that we have something that the public can see and look at the information. A couple of things. I know that Kankakee has a little PDF that they've created. If you can look at that. I think what would be good to include in there is some of that information because it kind of shows pictures of what the solar farm would look like and this and that. And then also we had recently all received an email from a person who lives near one of these new proposed ones. I believe that our ordinance protects on all the issues that this person was worried about, but maybe we should have a section there says if you're a connecting landowner, this the decibels would be is handled by this provision. We are putting certain things in place so that we have protection because we have the certain vegetation that will be planted. They don't have to worry about the runoff, things like that. And then with the ag mitigation agreement, how we also have the drainage issues off, because they're not going to, a layperson is not going to get that, so we want to have a section just for a surrounding landowner who isn't in these meetings every day. So it's in their terms, so they understand that we have looked at all these situations, we have thoroughly vetted it to the best of our ability, in that the property rights issue, a landowner can do what they want with their land, and we feel that this is better, like Lori had said, to do it rather than having remote freight facilities all over. A solar farm is a nice contained, and it keeps the land in a use that is not invasive to the surrounding areas, and can be maintained for future farming, where anything else like a remote freight or anything like that, those facilities, the land is just gone continuously. So something like that.
Okay.
And then I would also like to, when you get to the point that you feel it's ready to send this out two local townships where we have this coming, probably all the townships so they know about it, but the local townships where we have these proposed solar farms, because they are asking on a regular basis. So maybe we could just send them an update. Maybe, I don't know how often you feel necessary, Sam, but, and especially that map, because that map changes every month. And maybe just an email saying, hey, this is what we're doing. We're in the process of it, still in draft form, but, and I like the idea that you're including everything that Rhonda had in it. So it's a one cohesive unit. I really like that. Thank you for all your work on that, everybody at Land Use. Appreciate it.
I will definitely address all of those. I thank you for bringing up the connecting landowner. That perspective, I think, is crucial to this being useful to everyone beyond this building, beyond the discussions that happen here who can't be here, like you said. And also, we do, just a reminder that the solar farm tour is coming up in October. If you have an RSVP, you can send me or Reagan an email. We're also going to take a video that day, buy the inverters and all of that, so that we can have something online that's from a credible source that is the Will County perspective, so folks can see some of those pieces of technology in action, and seeing is believing with things like this. So.
Okay, Debbie?
I just want to thank you. This is what we're kind of looking for, because I think the next wave is starting to come, and it's coming to my district. And I would like to expand on not only just townships, but also the metropolitan, or the cities or villages that it affects too, because believe it or not, townships don't always talk to their communities. So, to do that also. And can you remind us what the date is on that tour?
October 12th.
Okay.
Off the top of my head.
Yeah, I know. Right off the top of your head, or
October.
A reminder is always a good thing, especially at this time of year. We all get a little nutty, and we all get a little busy. So
October 12th.
the
Yes.
reminder is a good thing. Thank you.
Yes, and we can resend out that flyer so you all have another copy now that we're getting closer to that date. And
I'll see him too, and I'm sure you're already thinking this, but if we could make sure that Mark Schneider with the Farm Bureau is aware that you guys are doing this. I know I've talked with him regularly on it, but I think it's important for him to have this, because a lot of the farmers end up calling him and asking him all these questions, and he's been a big part of the process, I know, but if he has a packet that he can then present to somebody, that would be great. And then, like with the surrounding landowners, maybe if we can get a hold of them, we can send them, hey, I don't know if you want to send them a hard copy all the time, but it would be nice for them to know those that connect, and even those across the street, because they have that. And one other thing that lady did discuss was the fencing. I think that's something we need to think about, is to say, do we want to just allow chain link fence, or is there a different type? I know that the one that was proposed for the solar farm by near Raccoon Grove, it had a different type of fencing. If you could just look into that for us and show us that, and tell us what, maybe if there's a difference in pricing, because maybe we want to prefer one type of fencing over another, if we could do that.
okay.
Thank you.
We're also working on a south suburban cohort for all of our townships, municipalities, to work with the county, since we've kind of had a head start on this for a significant period of time, to touch on residential as well as solar farms. So we're working on that right now, and we also have done a survey for all our fire protection districts, and they're all interested in additional training. So we're working with the Interstate Renewable Energy Council to set up a one-day training at one of our county facilities. It'll be half a day residential, half a day solar farms, to discuss fire safety. So all of our fire safety personnel feel confident as these come to fruition.
Yeah, if you want to invite the panel members to that,
Okay,
might be helpful.
will do. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll move on to new business. First case is ZC 18042. Janine?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So zoning case ZC-18-042 takes place in Creek Township, and it is a special use permit for a solar farm on approximately 33 acres there. The special use area is the entire parcel, even though the solar farm is not going to occupy all 33 acres of the site. At the Planning and Zoning Commission, there were no objectors to the special use permit request. And there were no objections from any of the agencies that were notified as well. Staff recommended approval of the special use permit with 10 conditions, and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval unanimously of the special use permit with those 10 conditions.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion? Second. I noticed in there that they mentioned that they needed 4 poles for connecting to the comments. And that's not in our normal procedure, so we should add a special condition for that.
If the committee so chooses, the ordinance states that only the utilities have to be underground only when necessary to run above ground to connect to the existing overhead utilities, of course. So we would not permit something like the 4 poles on the site, you know, 1 pole to connect up to the overhead utilities. If the committee would like to allow those 4 poles, then that would have to be added as an additional condition.
I don't see where it causes a problem. It sounds like they put different equipment on different poles, and maybe this facilitates their plan of action. Anybody here have an objection to that? Pardon? Sam?
Just so the committee is aware, usually ComEd determines if those poles have to be added, and they're actually the property of ComEd. So sometimes that's stipulated, and going forward, I suppose we could always ask developers to, or applicants rather, to stipulate if that was provided necessary by the utility.
Okay, we can add that. Judy?
Yeah, I noticed when I was reading through the documentation of these that in their staff analysis, that there's a statement here that says the applicant intends to close the special use area with a 7-foot chain link fence, security fence in accordance with the National Electric Code standards. The applicant did not indicate if the fence will have barbed or razor wire. I thought that was something that you were not going to be doing. Can you give me a response on that?
So typically, the applicants, or the developers, I should say, they've noted that it would be a chain link fence without barbed wire or razor wire. In this particular instance, they did not specify if it would have chain, or I'm sorry, if it would have barbed wire or razor wire at the top. The depiction does not show that, but it's just something that I stated in there, that it wasn't specifically stated that it will not have that, so.
I think that we should, I think that's something we should really look at as a group. Do we want anyone to just have the freedom, any solar company have the freedom to make that determination, or is that a determination that we make?
I thought that was in there already, that we were going to do that. I thought we discussed it.
We discussed it originally on one of them, but this, you read it, that's what it says. I just read it from it.
And I do want to make mention too, within the A1 district, barbed wire and razor wire are permitted. I mean, so that is just something to mention.
So they agree to have that by right, actually.
When you think of, farming operations.
It's usually for
and
farming
taking animals.
operations. You usually don't have a 7-foot fence on any farming, in a farming operation, the fencing is maybe 4 foot or so. That's specifically for those animals. We're talking 7 feet, as a 7-foot fence gets in, a deer should want to jump that. I don't know, I think it's going to get caught up on top.
If I understood you correctly, Janine, you're saying that the way it stands right now, a person can do that by right in that area?
Correct, yeah, the A1
Okay.
zoning district.
Even though we may not like that, that is what's already in the
Doesn't matter, this is a solar farm.
Okay.
But when to be honest with you, I understand what you're saying, but if I were a solar person, I'm not thinking about deer or animals, I'm thinking about people. I think I want to keep people out to do damage in there. I mean, I'm just saying these are mostly rural areas, and strange things happen in rural, sometimes strange things happen, and if you don't have a way to detour somebody climbing that fence, they do. I'm just saying. That would be my opinion.
Yes. If I remember correctly, with the zoning ordinance, or I should say the electrical code, The electrical code says that it should be minimum 6 foot with chain link fence above it. And then we took that out in our zoning ordinance, I believe, so we only allow the 7 foot chain link fence with no. So I think that's where the confusion is lying.
Yeah, so that statement there, I guess then they would not be having anything.
Correct.
Even though that says that they did not indicate it, we do not allow it.
Right.
That's just one clarification for that.
Pull the ordinance so I can read straight from it.
Good job.
So it says, I gotta like scroll, so you can get here. Okay, solar energy, and this is secure barrier, there's a section. Solar energy systems that are part of a solar farm must be enclosed by perimeter security fencing or other county-approved barrier with a minimum height of at least 7 feet. So you do have to have at least a 7 foot height fence. The use of barbed wire or razor wire is prohibited unless expressly approved. So assume it's not allowed, and if we made mention that they didn't, you know, it's kind of connecting the pieces here with that. They didn't mention it, we bring it to their attention. If they do want to put barbed wire, they should ask so today, right now, so that the committee can have it. Otherwise, it won't be there.
Okay, so.
In terms of solar farm. And
Yeah, I just wanted that clarified since it said that the applicant did not indicate it. I just wanted to clarify that. We did not allow it, so, thank you.
Okay, back to the 4 riser poles. If we put in a condition that they are allowed if Commonwealth Edison requested. Does that sound reasonable, Sam?
Supervisor Novak and I were just speaking, and the tax assessment on these properties is based on the panel improvements. So any change to the property, even if that is a ComEd pole, because ComEd pays taxes. So we have to list, maybe we should start just getting a list of all of the items to be added. So that might be, I don't know, I'm just ballparking, 10 pounds of concrete, one small storage shed, so that we have some sense of consistency with the taxing of these properties. So the more variety that is involved with these projects, the more difficult it is to project tax responsibility. So a razor wire versus a chain link versus a PVC privacy, you know. So all of those things will factor into the tax assessment. So that was a very great point. Thank you, Supervisor. Okay. Did I get that right? You got it right. Okay. So just for your consideration. And we can have the developer list who's the owner of each respective item. Because if ComEd is the owner, that definitely does make a difference in the assessment of the property.
Judy?
Yes, so that's a good point. I'm glad that you brought that up because I attended a meeting last night and the residents asked, well, what is our benefit if somebody puts a solar farm in? You know, so that's kind of a good thing because that actually increases the value of the land because of putting an additional improvement on it. So then the tax revenue that would be generated would be greater. I know the residents are looking for some relief, hoping that it happens.
The actual incentive to the taxpayer is, I just had the girls run for me just for your informational purposes. So let's say we have an 80-acre farm. A tax bill on an 80-acre farm is going to be about $1,900 at a 9.5% tax rate. A tax amount on a 2 meg solar system is going to be much more than that. It's going to, you know, you're talking 6 times the amount. And that's just the panels. So if they have a control building, it kind of goes in line with cell towers. We don't value the actual cell tower, but the concrete that you need to adhere, you know, put the poles to, that concrete is valued, fences are valued, control buildings are valued, and those are all over and above that per megawatt solar value that the Department of Revenue puts out. So it's important that on each of them, that we know what they're actually adding as improvements so that we can make sure that we capture those as well, provided that those are, you know, real property. If they have some kind of rolling cart or something, that wouldn't count. But so I think Sam and I are on the same page. It sounds like Janine and the rest of land uses as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, do we need the 4 poles in our?
I was discussing with Jess a little bit about this, just from proposals that we've seen with the other developers. I mean, and we can let the applicant speak to this as well, but there is the option to have what is called the equipment, a cabinet. It doesn't have to be on a pole, a riser pole. So, you know, I think what might be required by ComEd is one situation, and what's easier or a little bit more economical for the developer might be a different situation. So we have seen site plans where there is only, you know, one equipment cabinet and then one riser pole where the, you know, electrical is coming out of this cabinet, connecting to the pole and connecting over to ComEd's utility lines, as opposed to 4 poles, which might be more, you know, a little bit cheaper for the developer to do, as opposed to running it underground over there. But I think maybe the developer could speak to that, or Sam.
Is the developer here?
Yes.
Yes.
Would you like to come down and tell us why you want 4 poles? State your name, please.
My name is Jonathan Roberts. I work with Salvaged as a developer, engineering background. I've built about 51 of these projects in 7 states. We primarily need the poles to interconnect with ComEd's infrastructure. As Sam mentioned, it's often specified to us from ComEd how they would like for us to interconnect with their system. Typically, it would involve wires going from our poles to their poles to interconnect with their distribution and transmission network.
Why do you need 4 poles? Different equipment on different poles?
There's different equipment on different
Do you
poles.
still have a shed also on the property?
We will not have a shed, but I heard someone else mention a cabinet. We probably will have something on the order of our inverter. That'll be, let's say, 10 foot by 10 foot.
Okay.
And then there will be some transformer pad to take the AC from the inverter to
Okay.
step
So
up.
these poles don't replace those equipment in the cabinet?
They do not replace them. They work together as one system.
Okay. So you would like the 4 poles?
Yes, and ComEd may specify additional infrastructure to connect to their grid for safety and reliability.
Okay. Any questions? Lana?
Hi, I just have a quick question. The actual cabinet that you speak of, the 10 by 10, how is that secured to the property? Is it on a foundation or is it a movable? Can it move to any place?
It'll be secured. It'll likely be on a concrete pad.
Okay, thank you.
And then on the chain link fence question, we specified in our site plan a 7-foot fence with no barbed wire.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. So he wants the 4 poles, so let's add a condition that we'll have 4 poles if required by ComEd.
Well, maybe we don't say pool, maybe we could just say poles as required by ComEd. Because depending on how the farm
He's
is.
got a better point.
It may be 2.
Okay, I'll amend my motion to include poles
As required.
as required by ComEd.
Okay, so that'll be an additional condition. Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
You might want to just say infrastructure.
Right.
Just in case it's something other than a pole.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
That way you have flexibility and you're not adding 20 conditions you have to keep track of. This is your utility prescribed condition.
Yeah. Please put that wording in appropriately for us. Thank you.
Thanks for fixing my language.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on this amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion carries. I'll vote on the main motion to approve as amended. Is there any objectors to this solar farm? No objectors? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion carries. Okay, next item is CC 18043. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Zoning case CC-18-043 concerns a 29.5 acre parcel in Creek Township. The parcel is located at the intersection of South Dutton Road and East Goodnow Road. It's actually about a half mile west of 3 previously approved special use permits for solar farms. So we have the first one that was, the developer was Cypress Creek Renewables, and then we have 2 others just a month or so ago. That was, the proposal was put in by Borrego Solar Systems. So it is within kind of the same area as we have some of our other proposals. It's also noted in the map that was included as part of the staff report as well. This is the same thing. Staff did not address any of the riser poles, so that is something open to the committee to add a similar condition for this site specifically. There were objectors present at the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing. They brought up concerns about noise, about drainage, about just kind of a number of things that they were concerned with. There is a residential area located on South Dutton Road, just northwest of the solar farm facility. It was stated, and I'll kind of take it verbatim from a resident, that that turn is a gateway to their community, and they would see the solar farm first before going to their homes. So they did have some concerns about it at this spot particularly. And so they did voice their objections. There was a quorum that evening. We did have 4 members of the Planning and Zoning Commission present. So we did have one that voted against the special use permit. So there was a recommendation of denial from the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I'm happy to address any questions.
Thank you. Any questions by committee?
Yeah, I do want to speak to this. As you guys all well know, I am totally in favor of the solar farms. When I looked at this plan for this particular solar farm, as soon as they put it up, I went. And for me, it's not a matter of where it is where it's located, because there's the road visibility. That's a huge issue for me. There is a hill to the east, and it's difficult enough to see vehicles, as one of the residents said to me, and I've seen it happen. You end up in the grass. This would also obstruct view coming from, as you're looking to the east. You would have to be right to the end of the road. That is the issue I have with it, and for that reason, I would be voting no on this one.
Thank you. Anybody else on this study? Judy?
Sure, so like I said before, there's a lot of situations we haven't had discussion on. These are the kind of situations we need to discuss as a group as a whole to determine what's the feasibility, how many are we going to approve in one area. I know we had a conversation before saying, well, not all will be approved. That's true, not all will be approved. If they are not approved, will they still go ahead? If they're not approved by ComEd for the incentive, do you anticipate, a couple things, do you anticipate that these solar farms will move forward in any way?
If they do not get incentives, they do not get billed. And if ComEd doesn't approve it, then they really don't get billed. Because ComEd has to approve interconnect. Otherwise, you cannot tap into their lines. Those are ComEd-owned, that's ComEd-owned infrastructure. So they have to give approval to tap in, 1. 2, if you don't get incentives, they don't pencil out.
Okay. So at the time that these solar companies come to us seeking a permit from us, Do we know if they have an interconnection agreement approval from ComEd or not?
It's probably in process when they come to us. ComEd slammed with these applications.
Right, I know they are.
So it's moving slowly. Most likely, if they're coming to you for a special use permit consideration, then that is because they have their ComEd interconnect application in, they have site control, which AKA a signed lease agreement with the landowner. And they need that special use permit to apply for the incentives. So that's kind of and the solar guide will walk through those steps and explain how that works. But it's no incentives, it's not going to happen. No approval from ComEd, it will not happen.
Okay, so another question then is, when ComEd does approve these, do we get a report? How do we find out from ComEd what interconnection agreements have been approved so far?
I believe the zoning ordinance stipulates that once they have the approved interconnection report, that they are to share it with us. Am I incorrect or correct in that? No. They just have to prove that they're in process of application at the time of special use permit application. Okay. So I don't know that ComEd has to or will share that information based on their confidentiality policies. But that is something that we can ask that the developer share with us.
Yeah, I think we should make that a requirement, or, I mean, we should we must have some contact at ComEd and see if they can give that up to us. I don't know why it's confidentiality. I mean, if it's an approved thing, it's an approved thing, and everybody's going to know about it. So can we look into that? Can you look into that and get back to us, say next month on that, as to what ComEd's response is for that?
Yes, and I should be able to ask the ICC if I can have access to the applicant list for who's put in applications for the incentives. Because they might get approval and maybe they find something out about the property and they decide not to do it for reasons other than incentives or permits.
Right.
Denise?
Yeah, just a question for a parcel like this, if you don't pass it, if they do get the incentive, will we have an opportunity later to change the landscape requirements? Because I think you said visibility. So I'm wondering if, say that in a package like this where it's too close to the end, or, the trees or the fencing would block the view, will we have an opportunity to put some special conditions in to move fencing or treescape or whatever to make that more viable?
Yeah, that would be a question for Janine and Jessica.
Well, I guess my question to that is, if it doesn't get approved here, I'm not sure they need to get local approval in order to develop the project. So if we deny the project, that ends it for the site, unless they come back in a year to try again, as our ordinance sets about special use permits. Because as part of their process, they have to get local zoning approved as it is first.
Okay, any other questions by committee? Are there any objectors to this project? Okay, would you like to come down to the podium one at a time? State your name, please.
Good morning, thank you. My name is Richard Van Haddam. I live at 271-15 Dutton Road, which is on the end of the street from the proposed project. And I was at the planning commission too, and I testified there, but I'm not objecting to solar farms necessarily. I think your staff is really doing a great job on trying to protect the environment and residents and so on. But I am objecting to where this one is actually proposed. I live at the end of the street. There are 6 houses across the street, and I think we're all concerned primarily about what it's going to do to property values. This facility is at the gateway to the entrance of our homes, and it's the only way in and the only way out of not just our homes, but the forest preserve as well. So we're concerned about having that at the end of the street. Visibility of that street is a concern as well, because it is a fast street. It's 50 miles an hour, and people tend to go even faster than that. And getting on and off that street can be a little bit of a problem for safety reasons. There are children that live in a couple of the homes. There's a school bus that picks them up in the morning, and they have to negotiate that street as well, and it's difficult for them as well to get out. I'm also, personally, I'm concerned about the runoff, about stormwater runoff. I live down at the end of the street, which is at the very bottom of the hill from where this is proposed, and virtually all of the water that comes off that site runs across my property. And it also runs through the property on the opposite side of the street of me too. And in a heavy rain event, we have a considerable problem with flooding in the areas and erosion. And that's something that I have to deal with all the time. I just don't feel comfortable with a facility on the corner that is going to, in my opinion, create more runoff with all the hard surface they're going to have as a result of those panels. And I know they're going to plant prairie grass and other things, but I can't imagine that it's not going to create more runoff because of the flat surfaces. And all that water comes down the street or crosses the neighbor to the north and ends up running down our swales and through my property on the other side of the street. I actually have 37 acres there. And it was engineered to handle the runoff from the farm fields, and it does okay unless there's a big rain event. But I'm concerned that it's going to be substantially worse as a result of this sort of activity on the corner. That's my main concern. Also concerned about what impact it may have on the wildlife in the area. We're right next to a forest preserve, and all of the homes that are on that street are all, they're all, you know, on large pieces of property, and it allows wildlife to come and go out of the forest preserve. And with a facility on the corner, which is really adjacent to a wooded property, which is next to my property, with a chain link fence around it, it will, in my opinion, it will make it difficult for the movement of wildlife there, affecting some of the small stuff, but keeping predators from getting after that. It's just not natural for, you know, what is the forest preserve all about? You know, it's trying to protect wildlife. So those are my concerns, and thank you for your time. If you have any questions.
Thank you. State your name, please.
Good morning, my name is Bill Luby. I'm one of the owners of the 6 homes across the street from Rich. I'm looking at these plots, the aerial maps, and I noticed it was carefully designed not to show just how close the forest preserve is to this project. You got this, Dutton Road is a dead-end road. It's the only ingress and egress we have to our homes, also to that park as well. Goodnow Grove is very large, full of animals, full of birds, etc. It's the equivalent of about 4 to 5 city blocks from Goodnow Road into that park. So I think that will impact that. I have a question to the developer about these fences that are going to go in around the area they're talking about. How far is the setback from Dutton Road? Is it 40 feet, 20 feet, 100 feet? Is the developer still here? Because I'm looking at these plans. They're talking about this 7-foot high fence. They're talking about having a bush that's 3 foot tall every 5 feet, and then every 25 feet, an evergreen tree that's 5 foot tall. I'll probably be dead before they cover up that fence for the rate of growth that they're anticipating. So that's an issue there. And I'm across the street from Rich. All that water in his property that comes down on the south side. There's two areas of drainage there. One is along Goodnow Road. It goes west from that property. That's the minimal amount. Most comes down by Rich's property, goes through this, this minimal bridge underneath there, and comes onto my property, floods my property, floods the neighbor north of me to his property to the point where it goes over his driveway and floods into one of these ponds. So I don't know if any of you have been out there to see what this looks like, but I'm assuming that 10 acres of a 30-acre parcel that will not have drainage, you know, they'll just have a hard surface and no plant life to catch the drainage. I know they've talked about all these weeds and stuff they're going to put in there, thistle, et cetera. That's supposed to be very good at it, but you're taking a third of the area that would normally absorb water and removing it. So right now we get about 1.5 inches, 2 inches of rain, my property floods. You get that, I'm sure it's going to be a lot less when you remove about 10 acres of that 30-acre parcel. That's going to be covered with stuff that has no drainage whatsoever. So that's part of the thing, but I'm just a little, think it's going to really kind of disturb our property values as well. You know, I pay $16,000 a year in property tax, and I really don't want to go driving down Dutton Road and looking at this eyesore that's not going to be covered up with the foliage that they're talking about in my lifetime. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other objectors? The developer, do you want to come and respond to what they're objecting to?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to speak to the fencing question. So we do have minimum setbacks, and it's going to address the fencing, the solar panels, and I think we'll touch on it. Remember Summers is concerned about visibility. You know, we have regulations related to visibility at intersections, especially to make sure that if there's an approaching vehicle, you're able to see without, you know, any sort of, whether it's a shrub, fencing, anything to be in the way. So the minimum, within the street setback for agricultural zoning districts, a fence up to 5 feet in height is permitted. Anything in excess of 5 feet has to be set back 100 feet from the center line of the road. So regardless of what the developer would be proposing, the fence has to be 100 feet from the center line because it exceeds 5 feet in height. So that is going to be kind of a good amount of space. If you're thinking from the center line, usually that's about 30, 33 feet is the dedicated right-of-way. So maybe about 70 feet from where the property meets the edge of the road. So that's just something to keep in mind there. So that addresses the fencing question, and the developer can answer any of the other questions.
They bring up questions about drainage. What is your perspective on that?
Okay, yes, I'm Jonathan Roberts from Soltage again. I heard quite a few questions, but specifically to drainage. It is our intent and will be our design when we put the system into place. We'll have complete coverage, vegetative coverage of the entire site in a fashion that will meet or exceed the ground coverage that exists from row crop agriculture with corn or soybeans. So with the native prairie plantings that we would employ on the site, we would have deeper root structures and ultimately less water runoff both during the construction and after the construction for the duration of the life of the system.
Okay. What about the visibility at the intersection?
In terms of visibility, of course, we'll fully comply with all the setbacks that Jess just mentioned, and they meet all requirements, and I believe we put those into our site plans that we submitted. In terms of coverage, I think part of the county ordinance requires a vegetative screening along the fence line. So along the 7-foot fence, we will have evergreens interspersed with shrubberies, and I believe the shrubberies have to have a minimum height of 3 foot, and the evergreens that will be planted have a minimum height of 5 foot. And over time, 5 foot to cover the 7-foot fence. I don't anticipate that being a lengthy amount of time to have a proper vegetative, tree screening as required by the county ordinance.
Okay. Staff, what about our stormwater ordinance? Does this come into play up here, or do they require to have detention?
The chief subdivision engineer has researched the matter, and most likely detention will not be needed unless there's over 25,000 square feet of impervious surfaces, such as gravel, buildings, whatever, added to the site. So we will not be looking for detention in most cases.
Okay. Judy?
So I just wanted to mention that all solar farms that we've approved so far, the residents in all the areas have very much the same concerns that you have had. In the beginning, when this first came to fruition, discussion here at the board, I'm part of the Will County Farm Bureau's Government Affairs Committee. I was down at an annual conference that we had, and I attended a session breakout, which was farming with solar, wind, pipelines, all these things that are not, not part of our regular agricultural community. I myself, my husband and I both have a 160-acre farm. We total about 130 acres that we farm. So what I wanted to let you know is that in the beginning, there were members on this board who were very willing to go ahead and just approve solar farms because they were pro-solar. I'm not anti-solar, I'm not pro-solar, okay? My thing is making sure that the residents are treated fairly, the landowner who is signing the agreement with them, as well as the surrounding landowners. I don't believe in any company coming in and just running roughshod, which is what these solar companies wanted to do. So I asked my committee, my caucus, to stop it until we get things in place, such as an ag mitigation agreement, a decommissioning agreement, plans like that. We did not have that in place at the time because it was new to the county, as well as the state hadn't. So we were down in Springfield lobbying for them with the Farm Bureau to go ahead and put these things in place, and they eventually did put these things in place. But our land use staff adopted the Illinois Farm Bureau's ag mitigation and decommissioning plans into all the solar farms that had gotten passed. So what the ag mitigation plan is, the solar company has to do a complete study of all the drain tiles. And if the drain tiles are not proper, they need to, because you figure they're going to put these solar panels in every so many feet, so it's going to go into the ground. So existing drain tiles would be impacted. So they have to do a complete drain tile study, and they have to put in new drain tiles so that all the water that runs off should continue to run. So no water will be blocked from coming onto the property, nor will it excessively drain the property that would be lower to it. So those are all things that we made them do. In addition to that, we have them, it's a requirement that they have to hire an ag specialist, consultant, to be part of their site development plan and everything. So we've experienced that this person would be on site while they're doing the development to make sure that this doesn't happen. One of the persons who might be hired for this, and he doesn't have to be hired, is Bob Jankowski. He's retired from NRCS. He is a soil conservationist, and he is aware of all these different things. He's provided to our land use staff the best plantings for them to use to provide the best soil, to keep the soil safe, to absorb most of the water and prevent a lot of water from running off. So I understand all those concerns, and they're a concern to every single person. And I understand exactly what you're saying because this is a new thing coming to our area. And I keep saying that we as a group have to have the conversation as to what is the density. I know in Crete Township said that they will not approve more than 5 solar farms. That is what they've agreed to. So I don't know what we're at, and we're probably very close. I think we're at 4 right now. This will be the 4th one. So Crete Township will not do that. And I believe that I will be supporting that they cannot, we don't want to have a density issue. Now, I had an argument about a density issue a little while ago, which was an issue I had. We didn't discuss it, but the problem is, as Sam said, there's 4 or 5 in this one location. How many can you give me?
Just
20 girls?
right here?
Yeah, in this creek, there's 4. So that to me becomes a density issue. How many do we want to go ahead and approve for an area? We've not had that discussion because an argument was brought up to say, all these won't be approved, which is true. So when I attended a meeting in Beecher where they had ComEd, and I think we should bring ComEd here and have this discussion publicly. At that time, it was several months back, there were 450 interconnection agreements, projects that they were working on solar farms. Of those, ComEd said only 60 would probably qualify for and that was in January maybe of next year. So a very small amount would get in. That's statewide. That's just not Will County. Okay. So it is an issue, and I think we need to have that discussion on it to be fair to everybody and come up with a standard because I don't know how we can approve one and not approve another without having a standard that we all agree to here on the board. So I agree with all your issues, and most, I believe that we've addressed all the issues within our ordinance that we require the solar companies to respond to. We really do. I mean, we haven't had a solar thing built yet, we haven't had a solar farm built, but I think that when it is built, if we have an issue with it, the conditions that we have placed on them would guarantee that if there is a water problem, correct me if I'm wrong, if there's a water problem because of the drainage, that they will have to rectify that so that the landowner to the south or to the north, whatever upland or down is blocked, if that water is blocked, they have to correct that issue. And if you have water issues, we live in the area, we don't have sewers. I live on a farm, so our ditches are our sewer system. So wherever what's getting water now will continue to get water because we're not changing that. But they may even improve it because it's possible this particular piece does not have good drainage. And when they come in, they're required to put in a good drainage system for the stormwater runoff.
Thank you. Denise?
Not a question for you, but for you, Lori. Does the 100 feet meet your need? 100 feet back on the setback and visibility?
Would be much better. My whole issue is the safety then.
It's visibility, but the 100 feet does cover that.
But at the same time, you're still looking to that left as you're coming out of there, so that is going to be blockage that wasn't there before for them to be able to see it. Do you see what I'm saying? And as you come up, you have more holes.
Right, but if it's 100 feet back, you're not looking at it. That's what I'm asking.
Yes, you are looking at it, but you would be beyond it. It would be have to be a bit better.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
What the direction will look like.
Now, I want to kind of agree with Judy, and I've said it at numerous committees now, besides this one now. I used to be dead against the solar farms. Sam gave me enough facts that I changed my opinion, so I'm not dead against them anymore. But, thank you, Sam. But one of the problems we have is we approve things and we don't look at the impact for the region. And Jim Mooses brought it up, and then I copied what he said and repeated it over and over again. We approve things because it's okay, it fits the ordinance, it's a good idea, all that stuff. But we never ever take into effect the consequences for the surrounding general area, like 5 miles away in some cases. So, sooner or later we're going to have to do that, and I think that's something that as a county we need to look at it and say, if we do this, what is the impact on it?
Debbie?
One thing is, I get what you're saying about visibility, but if a farmer plants corn there, and he's going to plant it right to the edge of that field. I grew up on a farm, I know. They're not going to be able to see because of that. This will be, move back 100 feet, it's still lots of visibility. However, in that frame, until we have that density, can talk with our, I would like to say I would like to make a motion to table this so we can all go back to our caucuses, talk about a density issue, because this is going to keep coming up time and time again, and we're just keep going around in circles and nothing's going to happen. So I would like to table this. All members go back to their caucus, have that conversation, and then come back with this. So that would be my motion.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion to the table. Take a roll, please.
Judy Okawa?
Yes.
Steve Rowland?
Yes.
Debbie Miller-Tulloch?
Yes.
Lori Summers?
Yes.
Denise Winfrey? Karen Ferry?
Yes.
And Chairman Raymond?
No. Okay, motion carried. Okay, this table. Thank you, sir. Move on to the next item, ZC 18044. Janine?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the last solar farm on our agenda for today. ZC 18044 takes place in Lee Township. and it is a 2 megawatt facility on approximately 21.4 acres there. We had no objectors at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We had no objections from any of the agencies that were notified as well. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval with 10 conditions by staff, and staff also recommended approval of this solar farm.
Thank you. Any questions by committee? Judith?
So this is very close to my house. I know the property is not, I think this is like one of those really good spots to put something simply because it's not a very good air producing property. I know people who have farmed that particular parcel in the past, and it's low in production. So for me, that's a good use. I don't like when we have solar farms on prime farmland with a real high Lisa score from the Soil and Water Conservation District. So I think it's kind of a good one for that. And the 100-foot setback will probably provide better visibility on that corner because it's a very, very busy intersection right there. So. And then the main concern I have there is just with the drainage to make sure that there's a lot, they're high and the rest of the people around them will be low. So we want to make sure that that drainage is totally looked at and make sure that the ag specialist is on during the entire process of that project.
Any other comments?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Second. We need to have an amendment concerning the additional infrastructure required by comment.
Motion to amend.
Second.
Motion to amend. Okay. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion carries. A motion to approve as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Next item is cargo containers, Colin.
You asked me to look at cargo containers.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break before we get started?
Okay. The possibility of amending the zoning ordinance for using cargo containers as dwelling units. It has been being looked at in various locations throughout the U.S., Las Vegas, San Francisco, Wichita, and Tulsa. In summary, how they've been looking at it is that that cargo containers would be considered basically a building material, and that there would need to be architectural guidelines inside the development code, and then all the structural integrity reports and whatnot would go through the building code. In this case, since we're only looking at the zoning code, the changes to the ordinance would be to allow them as a special use in any district, and then, of course, subject to the building ordinance. And then have stick-built facades in order to give that architectural distinction. And also, if being used for residential purposes, have some sort of peaked or pitched roof, particularly for the snow loads. Now, to get your opinion, continue on. They would have a list of acceptable building materials for the siding materials, and then also have a list of excluded building materials, such as plywood, stuff like that. So in this case, we would consider under what's being proposed that this would not be an acceptable conversion to a residential use. That doesn't belong in it because one, it has no peak roof and does not have the architectural siding. This one does have a pitched roof, but not the architectural siding. This one does not have that peaked or pitched roof, but does have architectural siding. So none of these would be acceptable under the proposal that's being floated at the time. But this would be acceptable since it does have a pitched roof and does have architectural siding. What is not being addressed is the number of cargo container containers as part of the dwelling unit, the size of the cargo container dwelling unit, the overall size of the entire unit, and the configuration of the cargo containers, such as this one where things are offset, or does everything need to be at 90 degrees? So that is up for any discussion you may want to have. Any questions?
Any comments? Steve?
When I lived in Tucson, you had that in Cliff, but they had them all over the place.
Right.
And there was never a problem with them. They, like that one was different, but they were all like that. They were nice. You know, some people like them. So I don't have a problem with them. You know, I mean, they don't look like it.
I guess the biggest thing that I've noticed in my research is the beat to pitch roof aspect of it. Is something like this acceptable for around here as an architectural standard? Yes, it has that architectural siding, but it does not have that peak roof, pitched or peak roof that we associate with residential homes. Now, is that something that's imperative to the board?
I would think so. Yeah, that kind of looks like a flip shot job.
You know what, I think you have to take everything on an individual basis because that doesn't look so hot, but depends on where you're putting this stuff. You know, I mean, if you're putting it on a wooded lot that no one sees, it's out God knows where, does it matter if it has a peak roof or not? The siding on it, the way that looks, it doesn't look so nice. So it wouldn't fit in a residential neighborhood too well.
The impetus behind this is to open up the building materials in Will County, especially in the neighborhood areas. It's being looked at in the Fairmont area is where this is coming from. So the question is, how far do we want to take architectural standards?
For Fairmont, you wouldn't want them there.
Right.
So you need the peak roofs.
All right.
Denise, you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the number of cargo or size of cargo containers. I would think that our ordinance for lot sizes and structures on lots would apply, or
Correct.
doesn't it?
Yes, it would.
Okay, so that would automatically constrain
Yes.
how many and how big it can
Right.
be.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would just be considered. Everything else would remain the same. It's just adding, because right now, cargo containers are prohibited being converted for residential use or any other accessory use other than storage.
And do you have a height requirement?
I'm sorry?
Is there a height?
It would be the same as whatever the zoning ordinance is for any other structure. But that is a consideration. How much?
Because if you put two, double stack them,
Right.
and then say you put four, two double stacked 40-footers.
Right.
That's a pretty big living space.
Yes.
But how high, that's the other problem. With a peak roof, now you're pretty well up in the air.
But the building code was constrained that.
Yes.
So,
The same as if you built, like I say, if you built a three-story home
Yes.
in terms of height or lot size.
Exactly.
now, is there anything that says that I'm not saying they would do it, and I never saw them like that, but instead of putting it long ways, is there a rule against having it straight up and down? Just
Yes, I have seen that in my research. That it wasn't.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, it wasn't vertical, but it was at a 45-degree. Sorry, they were using the cargo container as a giant skylight. So that is a question. That's where that question, the last point, the configuration of the cargo containers, is not addressed.
But I think it's something that's a good thing, and we should look at it, and I don't have any problem with it.
All right.
Have you reached out? I was just curious, as Rhonda lot, but have you reached out? How would these be taxed? And I know that's not your different issue, but I wouldn't think we'd want to tax them mobile homes because they're like, there's like no tax base of a mobile home at all. I think.
Mobile home has no tax because they're not, this isn't movable.
Most mobile homes are really movable.
No, but they're considered movable.
Right.
This is,
Yeah,
this is,
so this would be just like
so
a
this would be like a house.
Okay, that's what I was
Right.
wondering, it'd be like a house that, okay, I'm okay with it.
Okay. So the direction of the committee would be to continue to pursue this and come up with a more finite.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then on to the next one. Last month, we discussed an error in our updating of the zoning ordinance. We left out auto rebuilders in our use chart, and I came in with a proposal of having it as a permitted use in an enclosed area in the I districts and a special use in I-3 district. Through at the public hearing and through other meetings internally, we decided to make it similar to the motor vehicle repair, which also allows as a permitted use in the C and C3 and C4 districts, and that's what was approved, recommended for approval by the zoning commission at the public hearing. So for you, we need a recommendation of approval to go to the county board.
Anybody have a problem with this?
I know. I make a motion to approve it.
Okay, is there a second? Second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion carries.
Is that fast enough for you? I am done.
Like it's the
Okay,
Good job.
plumbing code,
I'll read them, or you want me to read them?
That's just fine, you can read them all.
We're not going to talk about it. I just read them all, and you can understand that. I'm not going to talk about each ship of one.
We have a list.
Oh, you got it? You ready?
Got it.
Yeah.
All right.
And then one more thing I should specify is that this, if, as we go through this process, of the items you want me to look at, that this would be for residential. It's the residential side, where you're doing the work in your own home.
okay, anybody want to add to the list or take away from the list? No. Okay, we're fine with it. So
All right, then we'll
go
start
ahead.
investigating and bring forward some language that would address the matter. Or if there's a situation that conflicts with the state law, then we'll identify that.
Okay. Very good.
All right, thank you.
Okay, that's all the business we have for today. I have no comments. Any committee member comments? Director comments? David? Any public comment? No public comment?
Now they left the building.
Motion to adjourn? Motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.